Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Joseph's Fireside Chat series. Today, we're joined by three people from a very special organization, Legal Aid of North Carolina, who are doing some really exciting work on Joseph and in the access to justice space more broadly. We've got Scheree Gilchrist, who is the Chief Innovation Officer at LANC. We've got Helen Headrick, who recently got married. Congratulations, Helen. Chief Communications Officer. And we've got Meg Hennings as well, who is Program Manager at the Innovation Lab at Legal Aid North Carolina. Let's start with the Innovation Lab. What was the original vision? And how has that shifted now that you're deep inside the work?
Well, I can start us off. So, when we launched the Innovation Lab, the goal was simple, but also ambitious, right? We were trying to think about how we could improve service delivery to help more people and to do so more effectively. We wanted to test and scale new ideas, whether they were tech driven or process driven, that had helped us to improve access to justice across the state. But over time, that vision sort of expanded organically because we're not just incubating tools anymore, we're building a culture of innovation within legal aid. And I would dare say within legal aid across the country, because I've seen the fruit of that. When I started, I was the first chief innovation officer. We had the first innovation lab embedded in a legal services program. But now there's so many more people with that title of innovation. There's so many more people that are taking a more intentional approach towards innovation. So I think that vision, creating that culture of innovation, has sort of spread.
Why is it so important, instead of just incubating tools in a legal services organization, why is it also important to build a culture of innovation?
It's to create a sustainable model. It's to create a strategic, sustainable model for innovation and for change. I mean, it's always easy, I think, to think of a one-off tool or one-off project that solves something that seems immediate, but to have that continuous improvement and growth and change, you need to have, I think, a culture of innovation that allows that to happen and fosters that in a more continuous way.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think that is such an insightful observation to kick off today's fireside chat, particularly in the legal aid sector. We have so many sort of bursts of activity and funding for these sorts of tools and projects. But what I think we really need, and where I think we're getting to, particularly with programs like yours, is we're trying to build this in a sustainable way so that it gives us value in an ongoing way. Um, cool. Beautiful, beautiful start. Um, so let's move on to what we're actually working on at the moment. I don't know who's going to answer this, Meg or Scheree. Meg, great. Tell us about what you're building on Joseph. I know you've started with housing eviction. What's your vision for the tool?
Yeah, so we're working on a couple of specific forms with that. So doing guided interviews to automate documents for folks to be able to file. Starting with some of our appeals forms. These are forms that are provided by our state courts, but they're pretty confusing to try to figure out what you need to put in the boxes. There's a lot of extra information for like clerks or for the judge that the user, our clients don't necessarily need, our client communities. And so sometimes people are filling those out with the help of us, or sometimes they're just, getting them off of the websites and doing it on their own. And so right now we have those forms available on our website in a very static version. And there's information kind of on the web page before about how to fill it out, but then you go to the page and then the court has its own information about how to fill it out. So we really wanted to streamline that into sort of a singular process that does the form filling out, so that the guided interviews to get that document automation, but also really on the front end and on the back end of that, be very intentional about knowing what point that tenant is in, sort of in their larger legal process, and going over what has happened so far, what exactly these forms are for, and then afterwards, what are the next steps? How could they use other tools that we have available? What other steps that they could take? How to even get the forms filed in their local clerk's office. And so trying to package that all together. So that's one example. But we've also been building during the training a reasonable accommodation letter generator. So that kind of falls more under fair housing. And I'd see that really as like a preventative and proactive tool in addressing eviction, because a lot of times issues will arise fairly early in a tenancy, and then it might ultimately end up in court, right? When that relationship becomes so soured between the landlord and the tenant. But if we have tools and can help support tenants do that communication and that mediation with their landlord early on, then that could prevent a further problem down the line. And so that's specifically around folks who have disabilities that need some sort of accommodation within their tenancy, whether that's maybe a certain level that their apartment needs to be on, or a parking space, things like that, that if it can be addressed early on, can help prevent eviction in the future.
Amazing. Sounds very actionable and practical, which is very important for building legal tech tools in the legal aid space. So those are two quite specific tools rather than like a general all-purpose AI tool like a ChatGPT. Tell me about that. Why are you building these more specialized tools? What's important about that?
Because specificity is everything in legal aid. You know, people are coming to us looking for very specific, precise answers to urgent, life-threatening problems. They're not coming for broad information. And so we have to provide them with the information that they need immediately, as quick as possible, because as I said, that's what they're looking for.
Yep, absolutely. Meg?
Yeah, and I was saying, and we enjoyed that Joseph has AI components, but then also with some of the forms that we can kind of like hard logic on the back end, exactly what the user is going to see, especially when it does get more specific, like the forms that we're building, because we know what the issue is, what are the immediate next step versus something more like an AI general information chatbot that can maybe get them, to the form that they need to fill out, but has that more general component to it.
Yeah.
And I would also add, Sam, that, we saw patterns in our data, which is not necessarily unique to us. I think this is true for other legal services programs, but there are patterns in our data that show us that housing and things like family law, specifically domestic violence, are critical needs that our clients are coming to us about. Right. And so creating tools that address those very specific requests was important to us. And also within the context of our housing work, there are repeatable processes that we could simply automate that would make it easily, more readily accessible, as well as remove some of the administrative burden on our staff and still do it in a very responsible way. So, that there's that specific issue, but there's also the data backs it up that this is what we should be doing.
Absolutely. So going more specialized doesn't just allow you to provide a better tool or build a better tool. It also allows you to respond to the needs of your clients or your help seekers. Yeah, beautiful insight. That though raises a challenge, which is distribution. And I think one of the things that people don't often think about when they're building legal aid technology is, how are we going to get this in the hands of our end users? Particularly when we're building specialized tools like that, right? How are you all thinking about that as a challenge?
So I think a part of that is really important, is that we think a lot about the human component of it, human centered, both in people using the tool itself, but also how are they accessing it? How, what is the ecosystem of services that they're moving through in their community? Knowing what all the barriers are, especially in more rural areas, to accessing our services, and then by extension, places where our services appear, like online or in a courthouse or at a local office. And so, and I think our community partnerships play a big part in that, because there's only so much that we can do, but there's also a lot of times our clients will start elsewhere. They're starting at a DV shelter, or they're starting at social services. And so, how can we bridge that gap there? And how can these tech tools really help us to scale that, bridging that gap? And so if our partners know that these form automation processes are out there, or like an AI chatbot is out there, they can connect clients to those resources. And a lot of times our partners are the ones helping folks kind of go through and use these technology tools, whether it's because it's the library and they have the computer and the printing there on site, or it's an organization that has social workers on staff that might be able to do that kind of like one-on-one help. I think our community partners are a big key in that, and not just putting the technology out there. But I'll pass to Helen to talk more about our website, because I think that's the main way our stuff gets distributed.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to start off by saying, like, we do acknowledge that not everyone has access to the internet. But for those who do, we want to make sure that our website is as easy to access, easy to find information as possible. So we are actually in the process of revamping our Get Help page on our website. If you take a look at our website, you can go to legalaidnc.org and you can see that we have like over 1,000 resources, and they're kind of just listed out right now. And legal issues are very specific, as we've said before. And I'm not an attorney, which I think gives me a special lens on this, because I go to our website, I'll look at things, I'm like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. So we're really taking a look at our website materials, making sure that they are easily accessible, in plain language that anyone can understand. And now we're introducing an AI feature to our Get Help page, which is basically turning our Get Help page into a search tool. So the top of our page is going to have a big search tool. It doesn't have to be a question. They can just say, I'm having an issue with my landlord. Here's the information, blah, blah, blah. Then the tool will go through all of the resources on our website, provide them a short summary of their issue, how they can get help with it. And then on the side, it will have pertinent documents. So that's where Josef comes into play. They can fill out the documents right then and there. Other files we find useful. So making sure that it's accessible. Our website gets about 40,000 visitors a month. So we're hoping that with this, it'll really help people who are looking for help get what they need.
Great.
And I would add that tools only work if people can actually reach them, right? So, we are taking a very intentional approach to meeting people where they are, and that could be on their phones, it could be at the libraries, it could be in the community events, because what we've known and what we've seen through all the years of doing this work is that access to justice doesn't start in a courthouse. It starts within the community. It starts with people having access to information and the services that they need. And for us, that's sort of part of our strategy, why we've taken this layered distribution approach where, we built Leah that lives on our website and can give information. We are creating voice and text AI solutions. And we've maintained our in-person outreach through whether it's our mobile services or through our staff. It's, again, just trying to meet people where they are, and so that people can actually use the tools that we are creating.
Scheree, I think that brings all of that extraordinarily sophisticated work together, that idea of meet your users where they are. Also, what I heard there from you, Helen, was leverage from all of you actually, leverage your existing resources, your community networks, other organizations' networks, the 40,000 hits you're already getting on your website. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. But I think meeting your users where they are is a really nice summation of all of that. Cool. I want to talk about AI. Helen, you mentioned it. I know that Legal Aid North Carolina has actually been one of the front runners in the AI space in the legal aid world. Scheree, one of the first conversations we ever had was at Stanford, and we last year at the Law and AI conference, I think, where we were both presenting about two tools, Housing Court Answers that Josef built with NYU in New York City, and Leah, which you had built at Legal Aid North Carolina. And one of the things that we were talking about was, how do you know when you're ready to go? Because it's always challenging, but particularly when it comes to AI. How do you think about that as the leader of the Innovation Lab?
Well, with Leah, and Leah is our AI legal information assistant, we launched when we were confident that we could give clear, accurate, plain language responses 100% of the time for the very specific intended topics. Good enough for us And I think for legal aid tech means that it's safe, it's transparent, and it's trustworthy. It doesn't mean perfect. We're not going to achieve perfection. And so that's never been the standard or the goal. We as humans are not perfect. You heard Helen mention the voluminous materials and resources that we have on our website. And we were not taking the stance of, oh, we need to ensure that everything that's listed on there is perfect and people can't somehow misinterpret it. And so if we're the standard, if us humans are the standard and we're not imposing perfection on ourselves and we're presumably better than the machines that we're using or the tools that we're using, then why are we imposing perfection on an AI solution? So that's not the goal for us. But what it has to be and what we have to get right is that user experience and the integrity of the legal information. So we tested Leah with real users, with lawyers, with community partners before we even launched it. And then we continued to refine it after we launched it.
Yeah.
And so we have feedback loops that were built in to ensure that we could keep that continual improvement process going. But the moment we saw that people using it could do so successfully without staff assistance, then we knew it was time to sort of hit that green button and go. And then, like I said, just continue to work on it as it went along.
I think that final insight is very valuable. So particularly in the legal world, right, where there is this expectation, real or imagined, that everything is perfect or 100% accurate or whatever, which I think we know is not the case, but that is the expectation, or it's the story we tell about ourselves.
Right.
The unlock for us at Josef in building AI-powered tools was not you're at 100%, even though from testing, a lot of the tools are at 100% after a little bit of moderation. But the unlock was actually, even after the launch, you were still in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You're still in control. And that, I don't know whether we talked about that at Stanford last year, but I think that for us has just been such a huge unlock, because when you tell the team that, when you tell the lawyers that, they go, oh, fine, that's fine. Like we can take that risk as long as I can get in there and see what's happening and make the changes and edits, then we're good to go.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because we're not letting Leah run rampant in the wild without safeguards. It's still very much within our control, and we can change it and fix it and improve it and make it even better and more reliable for people.
And take the data and get lots of other value out of it as well, I'm
Exactly.
sure. Building on that, what else has changed about building legal tech in the age of AI?
I think the biggest shift, honestly, is the speed and then the responsibility that comes with that speed. We can now build tools. Well, let me start with the opportunities that presents us with. We can now build tools that are in real time dismantling barriers, right? So we can understand languages better. We can support people with disabilities better, accessibility issues better. The tools themselves are learning and adapting in real time. And so there are immense opportunities that are happening, and they're happening very quickly. The challenge, though, is because it's happening so quickly, one, something that we build today might be relevant in a week or two or a month, who knows, right? But I think the deeper issue is that it also means that we have to be even more mindful of our ethical responsibilities and also ensuring that the safeguards and the guardrails are in place so that whatever we're producing is reliable, is responsible, and it's not doing greater harm than good to the people that we intend to serve.
There's the next version, or the next episode of the Fireside Chat that's coming out is with Whitney Stefko Dubber, who's in the legal ops team at Ford Motor Company. And she said that exact same thing. They were one of the first in-house legal teams at a Fortune 500 company to roll out GPT-4, even in 2022, like before the general public release of ChatGPT. And I said, you've been doing this for 3 more years than most legal teams. What's your advice? And she said, slow down. You can move so quickly with this technology that you can just tie yourselves in knots. and forget to bring your people along as well.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I think that's going back to the point about the culture of innovation within our organization. We try to be, and I think we are very intentional about bringing all of our staff, like organization wide, into it. So it's not just like, the couple of us in the innovation lab making up stuff and then building it and distributing it. It's a very involved, very stakeholder engagement heavy process. But I think part of that is it's the need to, especially to test and to iterate ideas and to build, is hard when the demand for our services is also at an all-time high. And so how to balance that. Okay, we need to fix something about the system, about how we're working through innovation, but also we just need to use it right now because clients are waiting for us. The larger community needs us right now. And so how to balance that kind of that slowdown and that time towards innovation and thinking about how do we do things a little bit differently we have a lot to get done right now too. And so a large part of my role within the lab is engaging with our attorneys, our paralegals, our folks just across the organization. And I think that's one of the challenges of that, right? How do we like test and gather feedback, but then also know that this is not everyone's job, right? They're very directly providing services, and that's still the main goal and the priority. And we do innovation alongside of that.
Fascinating. Because that's so right? Like we want to slow down and do everything properly and bring everyone on the journey, but we're in the middle of an access to justice crisis. Organizations like LANC have more demand than ever in a challenging, political environment as well. So I think that's that is the competing priority here that we need to figure out. Great. I love that tension. Let's come back to the Josef tools that you're building, where I know we're taking a bit of a hybrid approach. So Josef is actually helping you build some of the early tools. And this is very intentional. I remember having these conversations before we even kicked off the project. But at the same time, we want to upskill you all in how to build so that you can maintain these tools over time, but also build more. Talk to us about that hybrid approach, because I think it's a really interesting model for legal aid organizations.
Yeah, and I'd like to frame it a little bit, and then I'll throw it to you, Megan, to fill in. And I like what you said about it being intentional, because we really do partner with external vendors to accelerate development, right? Because there are some capacity limitations within our firm. And so we have to do that in some instances. But we also want to build internal capacity in order to sustain and expand on what we're doing. And so it's not enough to just launch a tool. We need to own the knowledge and be able to sustain it long term. So the rule of thumb for me anyways is that and to use like a build-in analogy, we're outsourcing the scaffolding, but we're owning everything else. So we own the strategy and the data. And that helps us protect our client confidentiality. It helps us control long-term costs. And then it also helps us to ensure that every innovation that we come up with, it's actually strengthening our team and allowing our firm to be future ready, as opposed to we're completely reliant and dependent on an external provider.
Great. Megan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, so it's been really great to actually learn the Josef tool, and the reasonable accommodation letter generator that I mentioned. We kind of use that as both the training. Bryant Bumpus was a fantastic trainer that we've been working with, but we were in real time building that letter generator as the way that we were learning the tool ourselves. Some of us from the legal aid staff. So that was great. And we kind of, even before we chose to go with Josef, we're thinking through, low code, no code solutions. At that time, didn't really have the capacity on our staff to have a no code or like build it from scratch ourselves solution. but also we didn't want to be entirely reliant, like Scheree said, on an external vendor. But I love that the Josef is really kind of lies in the sweet spot for me in learning how to use it, because it was like I could take the legal knowledge, the stuff that I know, and then learn this tool that it takes some learning, but also it's not that high of a barrier that I don't have to become a software engineer myself to figure out how to do. And especially for our staff members that have some background in, say, website development or content generating, I think it's a really great way to build that capacity, but then also tap into the skills that our advocates have outside of just doing the legal part of it. And so it's been a great way to develop the learning process since we kind of decided to go down this path until now. And I'm really excited to build it more and publish on our website and see what the reaction is and test it out with our staff and with our communities more broadly.
Cool.
And I can't underscore enough the model, the Josef model, where you have that built-in training and support system, because like Megan said, we would not have had the capacity to take on something like that, where we're learning it as we go and then building also. So having that built in, I think you call it your university. What do you call it? University, or your time where you can get like expert assistance.
The designer and builder program.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that was such a neat thing for us to be involved in and be part of.
Great. And I think I'm so glad that resonates, because we designed that. I mean, many people at Josef are ex-lawyers or people who worked in the legal industry, including at legal aid organizations. And so I think for us, it was always so critical that you have control. You own the tool. You understand what goes where, not only so that you can make those tweaks and changes and not be locked into those horrific automation contracts that we know about, where you spend $10,000 to make one tiny change, but also because we're going to build better technology if the subject matter experts are the ones who are in control. Not only the law, but you also know your clients. You also know the context in which they operate. And so you're going to build better tech than we ever would, or a consultant. Cool. To that point, I suppose, what advice would you give another legal aid organization who's just setting out on this journey?
I think you already said it. Start small, stay focused, and design with your users and not for your users.
Yeah.
I think we all often make the mistake of presuming to know what the problem is and know what the challenges are, and we design for instead of with. One of the things that we've talked about here in the lab is going now to our staff and maybe even to our community and saying, tell us your story, as opposed to, the more kind of design language of what's your pain point and your obstacles and challenges, but tell us your story. Tell us what's not working for you and what would you love to change. Just talk to us and share that with us. So I think that's sort of where we live and how we're trying to approach it, and then refining even the language around that so it's more approachable for people. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons. And then I think for me, and this is looking in hindsight, right? I don't think I would change anything. I want to caveat this, but I think is trying to do too much too fast. Innovation takes structure. Sustained innovation takes structure. And that's both building the governance and piloting safely and learning from your failure. For us, because there was no blueprint and people didn't understand what we were doing, and we needed to have like a proof of concept, that we went really fast, really early on, which, like I said, I don't think we could have changed or would have changed how we did things, because it just had to be done that way. But I think if I were advising somebody with the experience that I now have, it would be to not go too fast, too early on, and to really think about how you want to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. I think failure is only a failure if you don't learn something from it. If you have a 10-step process and 5 of those steps don't work, but 5 work, then great for the 5 that work, but you can also look back at the 5 that didn't and see, okay, what do I need to tweak? What do I need to fix? And in that learning exercise, then you'll know how to make all 10 work. So it's not really a failure, it's just a learning exercise. So don't be afraid of that. And then finally, I would say, don't wait for perfection. You got to build it, you got to test it, and like I said, learn and improve. But progress is much better than sort of this polished, beautiful thing that's useless. So don't wait for perfection.
Great advice. I think there's 2 connected ideas in there, which I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is making assumptions about what the solution needs to look like and waiting for perfection. And I think there's something in those 2 pieces that reflects a lot of what lawyers and legal teams do. We just sort of sit away in a room, come up with the structure, come up with the solution, and then perfect it, and then hope to hand it over and to get a gold sticker or an A+ or whatever we're after, right? But that is just so antithetical to the way that we need to move in this space, because we need to be constantly learning and we need to be building for others. So I think that's, I'm grappling with that a lot at the moment. Okay, final question, because I've taken up so much of your precious time, all 3 of you, thank you. What's a question we should be thinking about in the legal aid innovation space, but we're not?
I think we should think about how people feel. I think I've said enough about like the more practical stuff. I think we should think about how our clients feel. We often measure success based on numbers, right? It's cases closed, users reach, but I think the deeper question is whether people feel seen, respected, empowered, and whether we're building things that restores that dignity for people. Because people are coming to us, and for legal aid programs, they're coming to us as almost a last resort in some ways, right? They've been through the system and it has discarded them. It has told them that they don't belong. It has told them that they can't get access. And so I think true innovation in a legal aid setting isn't really about technology. It's really about the people, and it's about dignity, restoring dignity, or allowing people who have been told that they're less than to feel that the system works for them just as much as it works for anybody else.
Beautiful. Megan, Helen, any final thoughts?
I was just going to add to what Scheree said, and as far as like listening to the clients, everything we're doing is as a result of feedback that we've gotten from clients and the communities we serve. So we're not just doing these things to like, be the first to do this, or, this is really about our clients. So just going off what Scheree said, just always keep the clients in mind. How can we help them? Is this actually going to benefit them? Is this going to make their life harder? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess my big question that I think comes up a lot for me, and I wish was talked about more sometimes, is how do we help build power amongst low-income communities beyond just that moment in time that we're serving them? And that's why I think like the tools that we can use to democratize legal information and court processes, and connect folks within communities to resources and think about holistic services. All of this that kind of goes beyond that moment of representation in court is really fascinating to me. And I think there's a lot of innovation around that and how the technology can help us scale that. But I think that power, it really takes it to an empowerment place and an economic mobility that's going to have that long lasting impact. Even after they've stopped receiving our services.
Yeah, I think this space could use a lot more systems thinking to help us do that and achieve those outcomes. Yeah, amazing. What a fascinating conversation. Thank you, all of you. A beautiful way to start the week on a Monday morning. We will get in touch in a few months to see how the tools are actually going once they've been launched. Everyone loves an update, and we'll see what went to plan, what didn't, what we learned. Thank you all so much for your time, and I can't wait to see what you build.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much.